I'm Madison Timmons.
And I'm JT Timmons.
And we're the co-creators of the hit podcast, The Most Haunted City on Earth.
Look, we love ghosts, but we also love true crime. So we here at Haunted City Studios decided to create From One to Wicked.
A true crime podcast with a killer twist. We'll investigate,
discuss,
then rate
the most brutal and devious crimes and the monsters who commit them.
On a scale from 1 to wicked. So sit back and kill some time with us.
And remember, next time you're walking down the street,
you might just be passing a perfect wicked 10. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of From One to Wicked. My name's Madison Timmons.
And I'm cold.
Because it is chilly for the first time
Freezing.
in Savannah.
It's too cold.
I like it. Makes me feel nice and
No.
Arctic.
Zero.
JT calls it Arctic garbage.
I do. I call it Arctic garbage because it is. I'm wearing for all the listeners, I'm wearing my Carhartt jacket.
You're thick
right
boy.
now. Y'all alternative to the death of me.
Oh boy.
Oh yeah.
All right. Well, anywho, welcome y'all. If you are new here, hello, first off. But basically, to give you a little bit of a rundown of the way this podcast operates, it's a little bit different than other true crime setups, if you will, because we're going to discuss this particular, well, today's a little bit different because we're talking about a cult as a whole.
Yeah.
And not specifically one person. So this is going to be interesting, the way we rank it. But typically, we talk about a criminal or a particular case that happened and we discuss them, and then we rate these particular cases on a 5-category basis. So brutality, premeditation, motive, difficulty of investigation, and body count.
Oh yeah.
And it's also interactive. So you who are listening, make sure at the end of this you give us your ratings. It can be the overall rating, or if you want to break it down into those 5 categories as well, make sure you leave us the comment on Spotify or YouTube if you're listening there. And then we are also currently live streaming for our Parajunkies, or whatever we're going to end up calling them for the true crime sector of the listeners.
Yeah.
But basically, those are our listeners who join us over on Patreon, which is the best way that you can support us and continue to grow our various podcasts, not only this one, but also our paranormal podcast, The Most Haunted City on Earth. So if that's something that intrigues you.
Oh, yeah.
You know where to find us.
For sure.
But today, we are going to be talking about the 12 Tribes cult.
So the 12 Tribes are a religious community based in Katoomba and Picton.
So many people tell me that they go to the cafe and, they're so happy and, they're such wonderful looking people. First thing they've got to understand is they don't get to see everyone. You only get to see the people they want you to see.
What I did find was the members that we spoke to were deeply disillusioned after a period of time inside, and that what they thought they were signing up for wasn't actually what was on offer.
For sure, they're a cult. Yes, they are a cult.
When I first joined, I wasn't fully aware of the discipline that was required of parents to give the children. They get disciplined with a thin reed, like a balloon stick.
Previously, I never laid a hand on them. Yeah, that's how I was with my kids. I wouldn't hurt them.
And the children are trained to not yell or scream when they're getting disciplined, and they need to stand up at the end of it and say thank you.
Which is a topic that I'm very excited to discuss because I've been following this cult for years now. And it's like, and this is not a new cult. It's new to me because the cult did not exist where I am from. And this cult does have a sector here in Savannah.
Yes, they do.
And it is very close to where JT and I live.
Yeah.
But
I didn't want to say that on the podcast.
I didn't say where we live.
I know. Well, no, I know. But now one of them listens, they got their own podcasts.
They do have their own podcast. They have 3 podcasts, which is 3 too many.
Yeah, or near them, whatever.
Well, regardless.
They're going to be looking out for us.
It's fine. If they haven't already put me on a hit list from TikTok, this one's really going to seal my fate.
We made a TikTok that went freaking viral, and we're like, they're gonna.
I'm gonna get murdered.
I know.
I'm gonna be the first person murdered.
They're gonna put a cookie on my doorstep, and I'm gonna like open the door and see a cookie and eat it immediately because that's like my favorite dessert.
Got arsenic in it.
It's got arsenic or some shit. Anyway,
but yeah, so I've been collecting their periodicals or free papers, which is what they call them.
Yeah.
I've been collecting them for years now. I have a ton of them. I have special edition ones. I've got Christmas ones. I've got St. Patrick's Day ones. I've literally got them all. And so, yeah, I have been saving them because with cults like this, they always end up coming to a point where something really awful happens.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be prepared for that.
Yeah.
And I'm going to cash in. So I'm going to sell my papers to a museum one day. But nonetheless, but I do find cults very interesting on a number of levels, not because I want to join one, but because I think
they're super interesting.
It's interesting to see how they are created and also how they get people to believe in their concepts.
Yeah. And what I find most sinister about this cult is they fly so far under the radar.
Right?
Like some of the things that you will like hear today, you will be like, what?
Right.
And unless you're like a cult fiend,
like us,
or you live by them, and you've done your research, you would not know about them. It's not like
even though they're worldwide.
Yeah.
They are literally worldwide.
I know.
Which is just wild to me. But anyways, enough of that. Let's get into
the
actual meat of this. So, the 12 Tribes is a Christian fundamentalist cult, which is how they are described by the Southern Poverty Law Center.
Okay.
So they are already classified as a cult. That's not even just us saying that. They are considered a cult. But
how they feel about that?
Not well, I'm assuming.
Or they're like, yeah, that tracks.
No, actually, they really don't like it.
They really don't like it?
No, they
Okay.
really don't enjoy that.
Heard
but
that.
they are considered that.
All right.
But it was born in the American South in the 1970s. It is a little known to much of the country sort of situation, which is what JT was just saying. Most people in the country have no idea what these are, even if they have one of their restaurants in their town.
Yeah.
They don't know what it is.
I mean, I've ate at can we say the name? I guess. Yeah, Mate Factor.
Yeah.
I ate at Mate Factor before knowing they were a cult a couple of times.
Yeah.
And then I found out and I was like, oh, for real? And then Madison and I did research and we're like, oh my God.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing is that's a part of their scheme, is they want people to not assume that this is a part of a cult. Like we live in a tourist town and I hear tourists saying like, oh, we should check out this really cute coffee shop called Mate Factor.
It's cute too, y'all.
It is cute.
It's cottagecore as hell.
Yeah, and it makes me so upset because I don't want
Dang.
it to be cute. I want it to be hate, like something we can hate on.
Yeah, it's adorable.
Yeah, it sucks, but regardless.
They know what they're doing.
But anyways, and on first impression, its communes and hippie-vibed restaurants and cafes can seem very quaint and inviting. Mm-hmm. But beneath the surface lies a tangle of doctrine that teaches its followers that slavery was a marvelous opportunity for Black people who are deemed by the Bible to be servants of whites, and that homosexuals deserve no less than death. And we'll get into that.
Holy crap.
It's a lot to unpack. This is going to be a long one, y'all, so just bear with us here because there's so much there are so many layers to get through.
Goodness gracious.
So they describe themselves, and this this is straight from the mouth of babes now because, their mouth, I guess. Because I pulled this from their website. The 12 Tribes is an emerging spiritual nation. We are a confederation of 12 self-governing tribes made up of self-governing communities. By community, we mean families and single people who live together in homes and on farms. We are disciples of the Son of God, whom we call by his Hebrew name Yeshua. We follow the Old and New Testament scriptures and live like the early disciples in Acts chapters 2 and 4. With all of our hearts, we want to do our Father's will, which is to love one another and be a light to the nations, so that they could see our life of love and know how much their Creator loves them, unless you're gay.
Unless you're gay or
black.
Yeah, I think haven't we seen African American people?
So we'll get into that because you can join if you're black, but you are still subservient.
Wow, what?
Yeah, well,
No,
yes,
that's
we're going to
crazy.
talk about that.
Oh my God.
Amongst Clash said, us Parajunkies need to go undercover for y'all.
Yeah, you
Please do. No, please do.
it.
Take
Do
notes,
it.
take photos, videos, all of it.
Crazy. They freak me out so
They
hard.
really do.
Every time I go to the Kroger that they're right next to, I look at them. I'm just like, what are they doing in there? Especially if it's like after closing and stuff. They're creepy, and they walk around. They look creepy.
Yeah.
They do. They look freaking. They look strange, but
And you can spot them from a mile away because they have a uniform. But again,
all right,
we'll get into all of that. So the creation.
Genesis.
No, not that. We skipped that. But the 12 tribes grew out of an early 1970s youth Bible study group led by Elbert Eugene Spriggs, who's usually called Gene Spriggs, and his wife Marcia in Chattanooga, Tennessee. It is now an international network of several dozen religious communes that consider Spriggs, who is known as Yonek, a modern-day apostle, and follow his teachings explicitly, lest they risk being ostracized by the cult and damned to an apocalyptic lake of fire.
Heard that. Okay.
Yeah.
Goodness gracious.
if you
Why Marcia a cult ass name though?
Right?
God damn. I feel like we always got a Marcia up in a cult, man.
Yeah.
Like, you know.
Of course it's Gene and Marcia.
Right?
Yeah.
Damn.
But, so 12 Tribes cult leader Yonek, aka Gene Spriggs, and
Check your neck.
and his wife Marcia founded the cult in Tennessee in 1972, springing out of the Jesus movement. The 50-year-old 12 Tribes leader blended Spriggs's personal beliefs with elements of both Christianity and Judaism.
Oh, okay.
The group calls itself an attempt to recreate the first century church as it is described in the book of Acts.
Okay.
According
Acts chapter 2 and 4, but not 3, and definitely not 1.
Yeah, totally. But according to their website, Gene Spriggs, this is a direct quote, y'all. Gene Spriggs loved and respected his father, but peer pressure proved too much for him. He was failing to live up to strong Christian standards his father had installed into him like a freaking robot.
Yeah.
On his father's deathbed, he encouraged Gene to give his life to God.
Okay.
And that is what he did.
Okay. I mean, you can tell.
Yeah. So
Gave his life to something. I don't know if
he
it was
did.
God.
Well, and because I went on their website to try to get their version of the story of like how were they created, and that was all they gave me. That is literally all it said.
That's their history?
Yes. And I'm like, y'all are so
Lord.
vague. Like, nothing else, but I guess not. But born in 1937 to Elbert and Mabel Spriggs, Gene Spriggs was raised in Chattanooga. So we're going kind of into the history of Gene and Marcia, if you will. More on Gene because Marcia had like less information on her. But he was a football standout at Central High School and went on to graduate from the University of Tennessee at Chattanooga with a degree in psychology.
Interesting.
Yeah,
He played football.
he did.
All right.
He also served in the U.S. Army and later worked as a guidance counselor and tour director for a travel agency.
Not things that you would expect a cult leader to be doing. But
Right.
sure. Okay.
While he was living in California, he devoted his life to creating a ministry, according to reporting at the time by the Chattanooga News Free Press.
Okay.
Spriggs said he wanted to reach young people who were not going to church, particularly those turned off from faith by their parents. You can't fool a dog or a child, Spriggs told the News Free Press in 1974. Kids see the hypocrisy and the phoniness in their parents' lives. Their parents take alcohol, tranquilizers, cigarettes, or they disobey speed laws. Those are the standards of
Okay.
we really
Disobey speed laws.
yeah, they want their children to stay off drugs and obey all laws.
Tranquilizers and speed laws. It's the
Heard that, dude. But Spriggs opened the Vine House with his fourth wife.
dang.
His fourth wife.
Fourth wife.
Let that sink in.
Yeah. That's wild. Fourth wife.
Yeah, Marcia in East Ridge during the Jesus movement of the early 1970s.
Okay.
The house hosted Bible studies and other gatherings. By 1974, the ministry operated 3 houses on the same block. The couple opened the original Yellow Deli, which is predominantly what their restaurants are called, but some of them are called Monte Factor for some odd reason.
No, they got.
I'm sure they got a reason.
I'm sure we can figure that one out.
But yeah, so they opened.
Leave what you think down in the comments.
Yes. But they opened the original Yellow Deli in Chattanooga on Brainerd Road in May 1973.
All right.
When people ask us who our interior designer is, we tell them we had the same one Noah had. Spriggs told the News Free Press in 1974.
What does it mean?
I guess they designed the places after Noah.
No. Who built the boat? Noah.
Noah.
Well, that don't make any. All right.
It don't make any sense.
All right, heard.
But I guess they're modeling after old Christian interior design, I guess. But
I mean, it sounds good, so.
I guess. But back to the origin. So the origins of the 12 Tribes movement can reportedly be tracked back to the Light Brigade of a 1972 teenagers ministry.
Okay.
The ministry operated out of the Lighthouse, a small coffee shop in the home of Gene Spriggs and his wife, Marcia. The Light Brigade began living communally and opened a restaurant, the Yellow Deli, while its members were attending several churches before they decided to join the First Presbyterian Church as a group.
Sure.
So members of the Light Brigade, while affiliated with First Presbyterian, caused friction with its establishment by bringing in anyone who was willing to come with them, including members of different social classes and racial groups, a practice which was not engaged in at that time.
Okay.
On January 12, 1975, the group arrived at First Presbyterian only to find out that the service had been canceled for the Super Bowl.
Miracle.
Yeah. This led the group to form the Vine Christian Community Church. During this time, the group planted churches, each with its own Yellow Deli, in Dalton and Trenton, Georgia, Mentone,
Alabama?
Yeah, Mentone. I've never heard of it. Mentone, Alabama, and Dayton, Tennessee. So
that's crazy because Trenton and Dayton are like 2 well-known cities in other states.
Yeah, exactly.
Weird.
But they created all these little mini churches with their little Yellow delis. So
because they didn't want they're over here renting a church, right?
Yeah.
And so they're pissed off that Super Bowl canceled it. And they're like, well, we're gonna get our own spot. I mean, I get that.
Yeah.
I get that.
Yeah, so we got out of the car at like 2 a.m. in front of the Yellow Deli. We decide we're gonna get a table near the back because they have like a bookshelf back there with a bunch of weird reading material and like pamphlets that they're trying to hand out in their newsletter and stuff. But yeah, so I decided that I should order food because we probably shouldn't just sit there. So I get the Flatiron Special sandwich. And, I mean, like, I hate to admit it, it was pretty good. It didn't taste bad, but, like, halfway through when I was eating it, I just got this feeling that I couldn't really tell what the meat was. So, eventually, I'm just like, this is way too creepy. I literally can't sit here anymore. Let's just get the f*** out of here. We go up and pay. And try to ask like the front desk lady some questions and stuff, and she kind of just refuses to answer and says we need to know her better.
You have to get to know us really better.
But anyways, she's like, why don't you guys come visit us?
You can come visit us anytime. Let me get you the address you want. You don't have to, but that's for Friday night. We have open house.
And we're like, what? Like, okay, I guess. So we get there and we park kind of like a ways away so we can walk over to the community. And I'm just so nervous. We walk up and there's just nobody there. Just nobody there. It's literally an empty driveway with like a school bus. And so we're like, I mean, I thought it was community day. I mean, there's literally nobody there. And then all of a sudden, just a toddler is like waving to us from some kind of high up window in what looked to be their main area. So, anyways, maybe like a few minutes after that, this old, sick looking woman just like stumbles down the f***ing stairs and introduces herself, and like, yeah, we follow this old woman up the stairs and enter in, and I look to my right and there are like 40 or 50 of the members all wearing headbands praying in a circle. And they just looked at us like they were not expecting anyone. Like, there was just no one in there who did not belong to the cult, and it was sure as not community day.
But a bunch of them?
Yeah.
I guess so. They began holding their own services, which they called Critical Mass, in Werner Park in Chattanooga, Tennessee, appointing elders and baptizing people outside of the denominational authority. So,
Yeah.
the deteriorating relationship between the group and the religious and secular Chattanooga community attracted the attention of the Parents' Committee to Free Our Children from the Children of God. They need an acronym. and the Citizens Freedom Foundation.
Yeah, Claire said, I think they mean since God told Noah how to build the ark, God also told them how to build / design their business. The designer is the word of God. Yeah,
I think that makes
you're
sense.
You're 100% right.
Yeah. And the Citizens Freedom Foundation, who characterized the group as a cult. So from the jump, people are calling them a cult, and described Spriggs as the cult leader.
Wow.
In the summer,
Wonder what they were doing to, like, at that moment that made them go, that's a cult.
well, I mean, they were
Not just a religious group.
So they were holding their services in Chattanooga in a public space, so people could watch in. And you know, there's certain like
So probably what they were saying
was like
the
that's-
fire will burn you to hell.
right.
Yeah, okay.
Well, because he's all about telling people they're going to die in a fiery lake.
Yeah.
You know,
That's cult leader for you.
exactly. In the summer of 1976, though, anti-cultist Ted Patrick began a series of deprogrammings that sought to convince 12 Tribes members to leave the 12 Tribes community. So from like I said, from the jump, people were like, this
is a problem.
This is a problem.
They probably were like, dropping booklets like they do now.
Yeah.
They're really like open with like what they do and what they believe.
Yeah.
Like they are very like straightforward with that.
Yeah.
It seems like.
Yeah.
They're not hiding much when it comes to their beliefs.
Oh, 100%.
And so that's probably what it was.
You'll see.
okay.
They conceal some stuff.
Okay.
But
All right. Heard that.
they have a very curated image that they want the public to know.
Yeah.
But the group nevertheless largely ignored the negative press and the wider world in general and continued to operate its businesses, opening the Areopagus Cafe and a second local yellow deli in the downtown area of Chattanooga. And
So that Yellow Deli is still in Chattanooga.
I think so. I want to say they are.
Yeah.
Yeah. In 1978, an invitation was received from a small church in Island Pond, Vermont, for Spriggs to be a minister there. The offer was declined, but the group began moving in stages to the rural town, naming the church there the Northeast Kingdom Community Church. So
Northeast Kingdom Community Church.
Yeah, because Chattanooga was kind of hostile to them, so they're like, we got to move our headquarters elsewhere. And this was the perfect opportunity since they already wanted them there. As their relationship with the Chattanooga community deteriorated, the group eventually left Tennessee and moved primarily to Vermont.
Oh, wow.
The group continued moving, closing down all of its yellow delis and associated churches except for one in Dalton.
Oh, so it's definitely
But this is in the 70s.
This is in the 70s. I'm gonna Google it.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then at one point, a leader conceded that the group was deeply in debt before closing the Dalton church down and moving the last members to Vermont.
Got it.
So now all of them are in Vermont. So let's start talking about what happens when they get to Vermont.
Oh yeah, there's a yellow deli in Chattanooga.
That's what I thought because I remember seeing it on their free papers that you can get. They have like all of their yellow delis listed on the back with all the addresses and stuff.
Absolutely.
But regardless, so once they get to Vermont, things didn't get much better for them. They've had a hard time the entire time.
Yeah.
The Citizens Freedom Foundation conducted several meetings in Barton, Vermont, to draw attention to the group. The Citizens Freedom Foundation had made allegations of mind control in Chattanooga, but now it made accusations of child abuse.
Alarmingly, Skinecki doesn't deny children have been subjected to this type of treatment here in Australia.
How did you feel about the attitudes within the 12 tribes of the severe disciplining of children?
How did I feel about it?
Yeah.
I thought it was great. At the time, I thought it was fantastic.
Why?
I thought it was...
Why?
You can come up with an argument that says, hey, children need boundaries. They're insecure without them. And
I don't disagree with that, but I've got a 16-month-old, I think if I were to whack her with a rod, I can tell you that she doesn't understand what I'm doing or why.
No, it's more like dog training. It's you're reducing them down to a more of a primal level. You're not reasoning. Before I had children, this was fine. I loved it. You have your own, and life takes on a different flavor. And smacking your own little human being on the bed there sounds different all of a sudden. And
it was different for you?
Yeah, absolutely. Everything changes when you have children.
Han's wife decided to leave the 12 tribes in 2009 with their kids. Their intense disciplining had become too much for her, and Han decided he too would leave with them. He'd started to question the behaviours of the group, not only with children, but also their attitudes towards medical care. Seeking outside medical help within the tribes was frowned upon. Even in serious situations, members were discouraged from going to hospital.
Oh boy, here we go.
Yeah. In 1983, charges were brought against Charles Eddie Wiseman, an elder in the group, for misdemeanor simple assault. This, combined with multiple child custody cases, formed the basis for a search warrant. On June 22, 1984, Vermont State Police and Vermont Social Rehabilitation Services seized 112 children. Yeah.
What?
Yes.
Oh, my Lord.
So 40 cases were dismissed as the parents refused to give the names of their children. Afterward, the 12 tribes celebrated June 22nd as a day of deliverance, a sort of Passover-like event in which God protected the group from the overreach of government. And they still, to this day...
It's the cultiest thing.
Right?
It's a holiday now.
It gives me such... the Davidians. The one in Waco.
Yeah.
The Branch Davidians.
Davidians.
Yeah, it very much so feels like that.
Yeah.
But
the legal battle is just beginning between Vermont authorities and a small fundamentalist Christian group that settled in that state. At the heart of their dispute is what church members call loving discipline, prescribed by the Bible. Some authorities, however, call it child abuse.
Armed with affidavits reporting child beatings, state troopers 10 days ago entered the homes of church members and took 112 children into custody. They confiscated rods used for punishment. However, a judge, without ruling on the question of child abuse, called the search illegal and released the children.
And due to what the group perceived was a massive misunderstanding of the events and concerns leading up to and surrounding the raid, its members began formal relationships with their neighbors.
Wow.
Because they wanted to be like, there's nothing wrong here.
Yeah.
We're fine. We bake you little loaves of bread and leave it on your doorstep. But don't call the cops or we'll put arsenic in it. But anyways, that is all just a joke. Cult members.
That's a joke.
Anyways, So all cases were dismissed when a judge found that the search warrant was unconstitutional.
Wow.
Frank Mahady, the judge in the case, called the action a grossly unlawful scheme.
Okay.
While Judge Wolchik, who had signed the initial search warrant, said that he was given false or unreliable information.
Okay.
Do you think they threatened the cops or something?
I don't know. I have no clue. That's wild. I mean, if it's false or unreliable information, then yeah, they didn't have any basis to rate them.
I guess, but
so that's crazy.
But the children, because you also don't know what the children are being told.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Like,
and the children are like, oh, I'm fine. My life's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, because their whole thing, and I'm sure we'll get to this, is corporal punishment. Mm-hmm. So they're scared. Mm-hmm. Like all the kids there, they got to be scared hearing what they believe.
Oh,
but
100%.
We'll get there.
Yeah. Trust me.
Yeah.
That's a big part.
Yeah.
But after that, all of the 112 children were returned to the commune within hours.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
2 months after the raid, the case against Wiseman fell apart after the main witness recanted, saying he was under duress from the anti-cult movement. The case was later dropped in 1985 after a judge ruled that Wiseman had been denied his rights to a speedy trial. Eddie Wiseman's public defender, Gene Swantko, who had been present during the raid, later joined the 12 tribes and married Wiseman.
What?
What is with these lawyers
Bro,
getting with the criminals?
It's like the Ken and Barbie
yes,
joke. Oh,
that's what I'm saying. It's like, what is with these people? They're like, you know what? You actually got some good points there, Wiseman.
What the hell?
And so, she marries him.
That's nuts.
Nonetheless.
Wow.
Continuing forward. During the 1980s, the 12 Tribes members followed Grateful Dead tours by bus, recruiting members from their concerts.
I mean, that is some work.
Yeah.
That is some work, yo.
That was a pretty common tactic amongst cults, where they would go to those concerts where it had more of a hippie lifestyle, or people who were going there who were following the band and stuff. They tended to be more transient. They had less people who were keeping account of where they were.
Wow.
And they made them prime targets.
Wow.
Yeah.
Honestly, brilliant.
Yeah.
Like from a cult standpoint, brilliant.
Right. Exactly.
Goodness gracious.
But new members, so we're going to be discussing more so about the cult as well. So new members must give up their possessions and names.
Is this still the case?
This is still the
rules. So
rules.
these are still the rules. Okay.
Yes. They must give up their possessions and names, live in one of the 12 tribes, 36 worldwide communes, and follow the cult's strict rules, which former members say dictate everything from how much toilet paper a member should use, which is 2 sheets, to the shape of a member's eyeglasses, which is round.
I hope they don't get the runs.
I know.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And to the shape of a member's eyeglasses, which is round. Now driving on Saturdays is forbidden, and Irish music and chocolate are banned.
Oh, so driving on Saturdays?
Yeah. Can't drive on Saturdays, can't listen to Irish music, and you can't have chocolate.
What do they got against Irish music?
I don't know.
You know, like that actually makes no sense, because if you go into Mate Factor, it looks super Irish.
Right.
It looks mega Irish.
Yeah, I know. But it is, you can't have it.
Oh my God. Mm-hmm. And chocolate.
And no chocolate.
I feel like you can't get a chocolate pastry there?
I'm sure they sell it to people who are the heathens that...
Yeah.
But anywho, so, and then women must part their hair in the middle, men must roll up their pant legs, and women can only wear dresses on weekends.
Wow. Out of all this, my biggest issue is the toilet paper.
Right?
What? Because it's like, I hope they got bidets or something.
Definitely
like
not.
Installed.
Definitely not. They're like sucks.
2 sheets.
Yes.
Amok said I need at least 5 sheets.
I know.
Shoot, I need a little bit more than that.
And I bet you it's the cheap stuff too.
Oh my gosh.
But anywho, and followers are encouraged.
You think it's 1 ply?
Probably.
Oh my God.
They're cheap, I'm sure.
I don't know. I mean,
but anyways.
Mate Factor does not look like a cheap place.
Yeah, but they are as like a cult. So,
and what are you basing that off of?
Just based off of the fact that
they're frugal.
Yes, they're very
I
frugal.
do actually remember. Yeah. Okay.
But anyways, so followers are encouraged to cut off all contact with the outside world.
Yeah.
And followers who belong to the community, as members referred to the 12 tribes, surrender their earthly possessions to the group and live communally, often working at the tribe's restaurants or tea shops called the Yellow Deli and Mate Factor.
I was not religious at all. I didn't really think anything. Like, I believed in God, but I didn't, like, try and make it any deeper than that. We have Friday night gatherings that are like open to guests and stuff, and just come eat dinner. So I came to that my second Friday in Savannah, and I didn't really think anything of it. I was just like, oh, this is neat. And then we kept coming. Me and my roommate, my brother's friend, kept coming to all, like, during the week and all this stuff. And then I said I was gonna stay a week just to like see how the life was for real, like, I don't know, because I wanted to understand more about it. So then I ended up staying the night one night, like just randomly, because they were going to walk me home. I came to dinner and they were going to walk me home. And then they were like, well, you can just spend the night if you want. We can take you to work in the morning. I said, okay, sure. So I stayed the night, and then I went to work. And I came back and stayed the night again. And went to work. And then I came back right after work. And I left work early to come back. And then I said, I said, I'll just start my week now. I'll just go ahead. And then the next day I was like, yeah, I'm not going to leave. I'm just going to stay.
Respectively, a simple or simply laboring on the communes or for one of the other cult-owned businesses.
Wow.
So I guess you can also be a podcaster. But
yeah, right?
That's up for.
They have three podcasts.
Yes.
What are they called? I think there's one called the 12 Tribes.
Yeah, one's called the 12 Tribes,
and then the other two have the word time in it. I remember that.
Yes.
It's
I'm pulling them up.
Yeah.
So it's called At That Time, and then the other is Time to Gather, and then the last one is the 12 Tribes.
Oh yeah. So go have fun with that.
Have fun. But and the internet is highly restricted, which is good for us. And secular music.
It is good for us. Oh man.
And secular music, books, and other worldly influences are forbidden.
Okay. Yeah, because after that TikTok, I've been like, every time I like walk to the Kroger, I'm like on edge, man.
Right?
Because I feel like they're gonna like see us and be like, "You're
Get
the
'em.
ones, get them."
Mm-hmm. But while homosexuals are shunned by the 12 Tribes, though ex-members say the group brags about unnamed members who are formerly gay. So I guess they will let you in if you're willing to be converted.
Yeah.
But also revealed were Spriggs' teachings on homosexuality. They must be put to death, the teachings read. Homosexuality is a capital offense. Trust me, his stances are mind-boggling.
Yeah.
On so many different levels.
So what do they do if a gay walks in the Mate Factor?
Again, they're just getting money from the heathens.
Yeah.
They probably won't They probably won't recruit them unless they're like, we can convert this person.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So while homosexuals are shunned, the group actively also proselytizes to African Americans.
Yeah.
Yet one of its black members glorified the early KKK.
Wow.
And that's probably like in most of y'all's heads, like, how does that make sense? We'll get into that. So the 12 Tribes tries to keep its extremist teachings on race from novice members and outsiders, but former members and experts on fringe religious movements who helped its followers escape paint a dark picture of life in the group's excuse me, I can't even speak monastic, excuse me. So the group's monastic communities, especially for black members who must reconcile the appalling teachings on race with their own heritage and skin color. It's a group that I'm very familiar with as an authoritarian cult, Dr. Stephen Hassan from the Freedom of Mind Resource Center said. So Hassan is a former member of a different cult who now researches these types of organizations. With authoritarian cults, there's often a top leader who is the Messiah.
Okay.
The prophet, the apostle, the dictator, and they control people's behavior. They also control information, thinking, and emotions, he said. Members typically give up personal possessions and work for the tribe. Cult members meet once every morning and once every evening for mandatory gathering worship sessions at which leaders preach.
Huh.
And that's exactly what the 12 Tribes does. So the 12 Tribes have communities and yellow deli restaurants in 16 states and 10 countries.
Yes. This is the cult that you do not know is in your neighborhood, but is definitely in your neighborhood.
Exactly.
Like, it's crazy.
And so another person who was commenting on the working conditions at the cult is a man named Rick Ross.
Boss.
Of the Cult Education Institution. And he said they're basically working for nothing more than room and board. If they leave the group, they have nothing. Ooh. And apparently in the teachings of Spriggs, members are also taught that anyone who leaves the 12 Tribes will die.
I mean,
eventually.
Eventually.
But I feel like he was like pulling for straws to be like, you can't leave or you'll die.
You'll die. Like quick.
Because I'll say so. But so expansion. By 1989, the church had become widely accepted in Island Pond, Vermont, and grew substantially during the 1980s and 1990s, and eventually opening branches in several different countries, including the Czech Republic.
That's wild.
Canada, Australia, Brazil, Spain, Germany, Argentina, and the UK.
That's crazy.
Yeah. During this expansion phase, the group used the name Messianic communities before deciding to rename itself to the 12 Tribes because that's much easier to say. Through the mid-2000s, the group remained controversial with allegations of child labor, custodial interference, and illegal homeschooling. Custodial. In 2006, the group held a reunion for members and friends of the Vine Christian Community Church in the former Yellow Deli in Warner Park, announcing a new community in Chattanooga.
Yeah, and that's what we just looked up. Yeah.
And so the movement proceeded to open a new Yellow Deli in 2008, nearly 30 years after leaving Chattanooga.
It's crazy.
So we're going to talk about one of the whistleblowers on the 12 Tribes, and that is a man named Sinasta Colucci.
You have to make a covenant. You promise that you'll never leave. You know that if you break that promise, you'll be punished for eternity. My name is Sinasta Colucci, and I spent 7.5 years in a cult before escaping. I had this thought in my mind, like, well, what if everyone lived like this? You know, it'd be the greatest thing if everyone on earth lived like this. Like, it'd be peaceful, everyone would have a purpose. I thought it was great, and I was like, I want to find out what happens if everyone lives like this. I want to do my part to make that happen. And so within 3 weeks, I was baptized, so I became a member of the community. For the most part, I was pretty happy there for a while until I had suppressed these urges that all young men have, you know, in their minds. All those feelings started coming back at a certain point. I went to this man that they had appointed as the shepherd over me. And I went to him and I told him about these thoughts I was having. And he said that you gotta masturbate, but you can't think about sex while you're doing it. You gotta have just a mechanical release, is what they called it. And then the next problem I ran into was they have what they call the Ham teaching. It's based on Genesis 9. Noah had 3 sons with him on the ark. Noah got drunk, and one of his sons, Ham, was disrespectful to Noah. So Noah cursed Ham and said that his descendants shall be the slaves of Shem's descendants. Shem was the other son who was, you know, respectful. So they teach that all Shemites, all descendants of Shem are white people. So all black people are descendants of Ham. So they teach that actually race-based slavery was ordained by God. I heard this about a year after being there. So like I was already fully indoctrinated. I don't know, I wanted everything else they said to be true, but it was really a struggle for me to hear this.
So Sanasta Colucci, a little bit of his background and how he's an interesting one because he is mixed.
Okay.
And so he was born in Detroit in 1984 to a white, free-spirited hippie, as he describes his mother in the book and his book on the 12 tribes.
Okay.
And a black man of Cherokee ancestry.
Oh, wow.
So Colucci's parents split from when he was an infant, and he was raised by his mom, who moved him and his older sister to Northern California when he was 3 months old. As a mixed-race kid growing up in the conservative town of Redding, California, which I didn't realize was conservative.
Yeah, I know. That's wild. I didn't think anything in California is conservative, but I guess back then.
Yeah, I guess so. Where barely more than 1% of the population is black, Colucci was both aware of and confused by his skin color. He remembers an incident where he tried scraping his arms with tree bark to make his skin whiter.
Goodness.
Yeah.
That's I don't know.
His mom responded by telling him he should be proud of his Native American heritage. And when Colucci was 10, he was at a park with his friends and witnessed 2 drunk men fighting, one white and one Native American. When police arrived, he remembers that the Native American man was handcuffed, beaten, and pepper sprayed while the white man walked away.
Jeez.
He admits he didn't know the context of what he saw. I could have gotten the facts wrong, he says, but the incident made a lasting impression.
Bet it did.
Yes. From that time on, I had been deathly afraid of being beaten or killed because of how I look, Colucci writes in his memoir, which he self-published in early 2018. In Redding, California, Colucci was called a panoply of racial slurs by people who weren't sure of his ethnicity. But he moved to Detroit for a brief stint in college after graduating high school in Redding and was working at a Church's Chicken. He was called white boy by some black customers. I was too white for Detroit and too black for Redding, California, he says. A few years later, at age 21, Colucci first encountered the community of the 12 tribes at their farm in Weiblo, Missouri, where he had traveled hoping to find a simpler, idealistic communal lifestyle.
Okay.
He was heartened that the first person he met was an older black man working on the farm who called himself Joshua.
Another cult-ass name.
Yes. Well, because when you arrive at the cult, you have to relinquish your name and you get a name from the cult.
Yeah.
So, which is another form of control. But it was relieving, Colucci recalls. They all lived together. They didn't seem separate in a racial way. Just a couple of years later, at another 12 tribes community in North Carolina, Colucci would find himself with a black leader of the fringe religious movement who goes by Yohanan Abraham. His real name was John Stringer. So Abraham extolled the virtues of Nathan Bedford Forrest, an early member of the original post-Civil War Ku Klux Klan, and tried to impress on Colucci the inherent biblical subservience of the black race to white men, slavery being a prime example of that holy dictum.
Wow.
As he recounts in his memoir of his 7 years with the 12 tribes, and his book is called Better Than a Turkish Prison, What I Learned from Life in a Religious Cult. The cult teachings about race are revealed slowly to converts as they are indoctrinated into a lifestyle of microscopic control dictated by its leaders.
Yeah.
It is now an international network of several dozen religious communes that consider Spriggs to be a modern-day apostle, and they follow his teachings explicitly so that they don't burn in the apocalyptic lake of fire. But 12 Tribes cult leader Yanek Elbert Eugene Spriggs and his wife would gather this community of members that are referred to, that's what they call the 12 Tribes. Mm-hmm. And so basically they're running this little situation until about the mid-1990s when Bob and Judy Pardon get involved with trying to take down the cult.
Okay. Bob and Judy Pardon. All right.
Because Spriggs and the other leaders of the 12 tribes tried to keep the bulk of the cult's teachings private until this would happen.
I see.
How does someone break away from that mind control?
You just want them to have other information so that they can make an informed decision.
Counselors Bob and Judy Pardon are critics of the group who say they've helped Figuera and at least 30 others break away, the most recent in 2017.
These have a lasting impact, that you've got to be intentional if you leave that group in order to heal.
So, Bob and Judy Pardon, let's talk about them a little bit. Bob Pardon was the executive director of Christian Counterculture Movement New England Institute of Religious Research. They also need an acronym. And he holds a Master of Divinity degree and a Master of Theology with a concentration on ethics.
Interesting.
Yeah, so he's very qualified.
Yeah, he's very qualified for this.
And his wife, Judy, founded the New England Institute of Religious Research. So together, they run Meadow Haven in Lakeville, Massachusetts, which Pardon says is the only long-term transitional facility in the world for former members of destructive cults and fringe religious movements.
But why does Meadow Haven sound like a cult name?
Right? I thought the same thing. But the Pardons first came across the 12 tribes when a former member contacted them about what she perceived as child abuse. A young child whipped with a long, thin rod like those used to hold balloons, which left ugly marks and bruises. Though she had brought child abuse, charges that were eventually dropped for lack of evidence, the Pardons were intrigued by the group, which Bob Pardon says he initially thought was being unfairly maligned.
Okay.
They had a pretty low profile, he says, and we had never heard of them before.
Okay.
And they'd been around for over 30 years at this point.
They're good at laying low.
Exactly. Because of their initial skepticism about whether 12 Tribes was a destructive group, the Pardons were granted access to many of the communities in the Northeast. They were doing the inside work.
Yeah, they were.
And conducted extensive research with leaders, members, and ex-members.
That's interesting.
Mm-hmm. They also studied their printed materials, the free papers, the ones that I collect. And the free papers members distribute in order to basically spread their propaganda and any teachings they could get their hands on. But even with access to Spriggs and other leaders, the official teachings weren't shared with the Pardons because they're like, we can't let these people know about that.
Yeah. Undercover.
Yeah. They said that we wouldn't understand, Pardon says, that we were not under the anointed, which means underneath Spriggs.
Okay.
I have 2 theological degrees and I have extensive training in biblical languages and Christian history, so I was always a bit dumbfounded by that. Eventually, though, the Pardons met ex-members who had been at the highest levels, right underneath Spriggs, and they took all of the teachings and shared them with the Pardons.
Ooh.
Once we got those teachings, we knew there was a very seedy underbelly to this group, Pardon says. We began to realize that this was a really heavy thought reform environment. There was a lot of behavior control over the members' lives.
Just by the rules, like for, when you're like becoming a member.
Exactly.
That's testament to that. Absolutely.
Exactly. And Colucci agrees and recounts in his book, the group exerted control over everything from when single men should masturbate, usually about every other day or every few days, Colucci writes. And you're supposed to And you're supposed to try not to think about anything as you're doing it. It's to be a mechanical release. And he also says, and to how to wipe one's ass. There really is a teaching about taking 3 to 4 squares of toilet paper, folding it to the size of 1 square, then wipe, fold, and repeat until you have this tiny poop-stained square that you flush. They literally are controlling all the way down to that.
That's nuts. That is nuts that they think that will work.
Right.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So among the teachings, the Pardons discovered the rationale behind the extensive accusations of child abuse within the 12 tribes. It's part and parcel of the theology that the child has to obey authority. And if the child doesn't obey authority, then the child needs to have that physical discipline, Pardon says. It used to be that only parents did that, but early on it began to shift over that anybody that came into the group who thought your child was disrespectful could discipline them, and that would normally happen.
FBI documents show 12 tribes' communes across the country have been targets of federal child abuse investigations, but none has resulted in charges. Several years ago, OSHA looked into a child labor complaint at a 12 tribes construction site here in Plymouth. Again, no fines. But Figuera says hitting children with sticks was a regular practice at her commune.
They're placed everywhere so parents can just grab them whenever a kid needs to be disciplined.
When we asked the community about the accusations, a spokesperson responded, "We aren't strangers to controversy, and many of these allegations are quite old and tired." Figuera, who's Dominican American, also says 12 Tribes' teachings are racist.
Black people need to live a life of slavery or in servitude to white man in order to redeem themselves from their curse.
But a 12 Tribes spokesperson told us we continue every day trying to make a home for the lonely and show God's love to people of all backgrounds and races.
So that leads us all the way into all of the child abuse. So when a toddler throws a tantrum in the 12 tribes, an adult might grab the child, hold them tight on their lap, perhaps by throwing his leg over theirs, restrain both their arms, and put his hand over her mouth or the child's mouth until they stop fighting back, which is like a very extreme.
Yeah, that's pretty
restraint. The toddler, and this is also, mind you, you're probably wondering where I got this from. This is from their manual on how to discipline children, which is public information. You can find that online.
Wow.
But it continues with, the toddler might scream and cry and struggle for an hour. They will not be free.
For an hour?
Yes. Yes.
They're holding them for an hour like that?
Yes. They will not be freed until they surrender, former members said. The idea is to break their will.
That's got to be good for their
mental
health later on.
Yeah, right. Kids were supposed to be quiet, and when they weren't, physical restraint over their bodies and mouths was expected, said ex-member Jason Wolf. The 12 Tribe teaches the children that they must be spanked with thin, flexible wooden rods, a practice the group has been consistently criticized for, but has steadfastly defended, saying it is rooted in biblical practices. The first generation of children in the 12 tribes largely grew up in the 1980s and 1990s, and former members described enduring extreme physical abuse during that time. The ex-member who left in his 30s remembered a practice called scourging, in which a child was stripped naked and beaten with a rod from head to toe.
Oh my God.
I know.
Now that's be super abusive.
Yes.
Yo.
So, of course, when people started criticizing this, they had to make it official because that's how cults operate. And in January 2000, a version of the group's 348-page child training manual.
Child training. Training like a dog.
Yes.
That's insane.
Was obtained by the Post. And it says children as young as 6 months should be spanked. If they say wiggle away from the diaper changes, they will spank a child for wiggling away from getting their diaper changed.
This is how they are making better cult members in the future.
Yeah.
More subservient, more just everything. They're using abuse, systematic abuse, to form these people into what they want them to be.
Right.
That's insane.
It is so
motive
manipulative.
And all premeditation and all of that going to get a high score.
But yes. And so the manual reads, the pain received from the balloon stick is more humbling than harmful. Yeah, okay. Yeah. There is no defense against it. The only way to stop the sting of the rod is to submit. That is exactly what the child will do. Submit to his parents' will and end his rebellion. Mm-hmm. Offenses that warrant spanking might vary from community to community or even from family to family, but there is tremendous social pressure to discipline harshly, ex-members said.
Well, of course, because when those kids are 15, 16 and they're like, maybe I should try to get out of here, they're going to be like, that's insane because I'm going to get destroyed.
I'm going to get beat to death.
If I try to leave.
Exactly.
Yeah, nah.
And so in 2007, a former 12 Tribes teacher pled guilty to molesting 2 boys in the 1990s. One of them had been sexually molested by an adult member of the group, he said. This one was when he was about 10 years old, and he tried to bring it to the attention of people in the group, and he was punished and locked in a closet.
Wow.
And that was the grown adult member who is anonymous, but he was 30 years old when he left the group. And so officials said there are likely more unreported instances such as that. And then in Germany in 2013, 40 children were taken from a 12 Tribes compound amid concerns of child abuse. In 2018, the European Court of Human Rights upheld a German court's decision to take children away from the 12 tribes.
Wow.
The court ruled that they had used institutionalized violence against minors.
Exactly.
And that was when the 12 tribes left Germany.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. The problem with 12 tribes is that when they become aware of problems like this, they want to hide it, Ross said. Rick Ross, the...
Both.
Yeah, says...
The rapper?
Yes.
Yeah.
Obviously. They don't want to report it to the authorities. They're more concerned about the group and protecting the group than they are about minor children. Which Hassan, the other official on cults, says. Sadly, fear of evil or perverse behavior going on among us has caused some to circulate unfounded rumors about us, thinking we must have bad motives. We hope that through having an open and hospitable place like our Yellow Deli, people will be able to see that we are not really strange and scary, but just friendly folks who love God and our neighbors. Their website says.
Yeah, my ass.
Okay.
They're terrifying.
They're horrifying.
They're terrifying.
They're so scary. In recent years, the 12 Tribes seems to have shifted toward parents disciplining their own children with less emphasis on all adults disciplining all children, one of several modernizing changes the group has made in response to outside criticism. But ex-members say the 12 Tribes would never fully abandon the practice of physical discipline, which is still a core tenet. Sexual abuse of children is not condoned or allowed by 12 Tribes, the former members say, but it does happen, and it is rarely reported to law enforcement when discovered.
Of course, they're self-governing. That's their whole thing.
Exactly.
They're not going to report it. They probably have their own police system.
They probably have, like, the court of elders.
Yeah, now, we don't know that, obviously, but, cool.
Just assuming, yeah. But sometimes a man accused of sexual abuse will be kicked out of the cult, ex-member said, but sometimes he will be forgiven and allowed to stay. How a case is handled often depends on how much status the abuser has within the cult. Frequently, children who report sexual abuse are not believed, some are punished or told the abuse was their fault. In a 12 Tribes leadership meeting sometime around 2011, a former member who was then a current member asked why a particular case of alleged child sexual abuse wasn't reported to outside authorities. Leaders told him that the girl's father didn't want to testify in court.
This is like super, super disturbing. And, really going in deep on this episode, I'm not going to look at the kids the same when I see them outside of outside of
because
Kroger.
you know what they're having to deal with.
Yeah, you know what they're having to deal with. There's like nothing you can do about it. Like that's brutal. Now, obviously, we don't know if it's I want to say we have no idea that if this particular sect does that. Like we just don't.
But it is like that is a widespread rule that they have.
I know.
So
I know, but we can't, we can't say it for sure. But looking at them is going to be a little bit different now because I'm like, there's a good chance that they're doing something to that child.
Right.
Or that child is enduring some form of abuse, which is like, oof, it's
pretty gnarly. And it only gets worse from here.
Oh, great.
So, on a number of levels, not just child abuse.
Yeah.
So, and so he later followed up with the father, who was the father of the child who was abused, who said he was willing to work with law enforcement, but that a 12 tribes leader told him not to testify because it would shame our master, Jesus, his name. Adding that the 12 tribes kicked out the accused abuser.
Okay.
So, going back to the homophobia and sexuality, like we talked about earlier, Spriggs' teaching says that they must be put to death and that homosexuality is a capital offense. Inside the 12 tribes, sexual contact of any kind is forbidden outside of marriage. And I'm pretty sure they probably don't believe in gay marriage.
So well, of course not. But
yeah.
So here's a question. And again, we have no idea. But these people excommunicate themselves from family and just their lives in general. The government probably, knows their social security number, but that's about it.
Right.
Who's to say that they're not self-governing on a very extreme level, right? For instance, if a member is homosexual, could they put them to death? And because they're so excommunicated, nothing's said about it.
So that is a great question. I wasn't able to find anything on that because I think that stays pretty close to the vest.
Of course you were not going to find anything about that.
Yeah.
But
I wouldn't be
surprised. Just hearing this, it's a possibility. It's definitely not, don't think that we're over here saying this is exactly what they do. But just looking at that, it's a possibility that there's some stuff going on.
Right. And there is punishment for young adults caught kissing or holding hands outside of marriage, ex-members say. Divorce is also not allowed in the cult, and interracial marriages are frowned upon. Homosexuality is forbidden. A 1990s teaching shared with the Post called it abominable. Yeah.
Abominable snowman.
Yeah. And says gay or lesbian people must be put to death.
Goodness gracious.
Yeah.
That's just crazy that they I don't know.
It's vile. So their thoughts on things is so vile. And I'm so glad that former members who were able to get out made it so widespread, so that people know. But after co-ed education was banned within their community, so kids are separated.
Okay.
Enough young men experimented with bestiality.
What?
Yes, because they're so suppressed.
Oh, God.
That they've turned to that.
To that?
That Spriggs, the cult leader, in 2006 ordered young men to kill the animals they'd had sex with. At least 30 sheep and several cows, goats, and chickens were slaughtered, which Luke Wiseman, who is one of the former cult members, said. He estimated around 10 men and boys confessed to bestiality around that time, both in the U.S. and abroad.
What? What?
Yes.
God, I ain't heard nothing about that.
Yeah. So.
Okay.
Now we're going to go into another really wild thing that they believe, which is referred to as the curse.
The curse. Okay.
So the sham teaching, or the curse of Ham, as it's more commonly known, stems from Genesis 9:20 through 25. In the story, Noah's son Ham, or Shem, in the 12 tribes Hebraic vernacular, sees Noah naked and drunk in his tent and tells his brother Shem and Japheth. The brothers respond by walking backwards so as not to gaze on Noah's nudity and covering him with a blanket. When Noah awakens and discovers what happened, he curses Ham's son, Canaan, for Ham's impertinence, damning him to be a servant of servants to his brothers.
Okay.
Though the Bible does not ascribe ethnicity or race to any of the characters in this story over history, Ham/Sham has been portrayed as black by many in the furtherance of white supremacy. Hence, black servitude to Shem, posted as white by racists, has been biblically justified by prejudiced individuals and religious denominations over the past few centuries. Hate group ideologies like Christian identity and those of the KKK have incorporated the curse of Ham biblical misinterpretation into their racist theology. Christian identity sometimes asserts the Jews are actually the descendants of Ham and Canaan. In the 19th century, Southern Christians in America used the belief to justify slavery. The 12 tribes' teachings regarding Ham/Sham both excuse slavery and perpetuate its bigotry, going so far as to attack Martin Luther King Jr. So, yeah. So they did. Because of this particular belief, they attacked MLK.
Mm-hmm.
And Martin Luther King Jr., what they said, was filled with every evil spirit there is to say Sham doesn't have to serve Shem.
Wow.
Yeah. All manner of evil filled that man, the teachings read. It is horrible that someone would rise up to abolish slavery.
Goodness gracious.
Yes, and Applejacks, who's joining us on
on
the live stream, said, "Wasn't Jesus Middle Eastern?"
Right.
Don't tell them that. Then they have
right.
to. Obviously, they didn't catch that one. But what a marvelous opportunity that blacks could be brought over here to be slaves, so that they could be found worthy of the nations. And this is stuff they still believe, people.
This is crazy.
What in the world?
Oh my gosh.
Okay, so yeah, it's and here's some rage. Here's some rage fuel for y'all to even further this. The 12 tribes insist that these teachings are not racist. And Applejacks, yes, they do think that Jesus is white.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Yohanan Abraham, the black leader who praised the early KKK to Colucci, wrote an article on the group's website titled, "Are the 12 Tribes Racist?" under his given name, John Stringer, which sounds white. Multiple requests by the intelligence report to interview Abraham/Stringer and other 12 tribes leaders were denied or ignored. So he wrote a whole article saying, we're not racist, but then wouldn't speak to news outlets, which is super interesting to me.
Yeah.
But addressing a New York Post article, the quotes from the group's sham teaching, submission to white people is the only provision by which blacks will be saved.
Goodness gracious.
That's how they think that black people
That's how they currently think right now.
They currently think that to this very day. That is still a part of their core beliefs. So
they're like super racist, too.
Super racist. And like the thing is, they will let black people into their groups, but they feel like for them to be let into heaven, they have to be subservient to their fellow white members.
Wow.
Which is just so backwards in a number of ways. But Stringer wrote that the quote is taken out of context and has no application within the 12 tribes where blacks are saved like anyone else by the blood of the Son of God.
Okay. So
because he's trying to save face.
He's trying to save face. Exactly.
Yeah. He concludes, the conclusion of the quote and teaching that the New York Post took out of context says this: slavery is over for those who believe and come into Messiah, but it is not over for those outside Messiah. Mm. The telling detail Stringer/Abraham dodges is that the 12 tribes believes only those baptized into their cult have come into Messiah, leaving every other black person outside Messiah, where Stringer/Abraham admits he believes slavery is not over.
Okay.
First of all, Colucci says of Abraham/Stringer's article, anytime a group has to have are we racist as a frequently asked question? Something's going on there.
Something's definitely going on there.
Exactly. They're saying we have to join their group to be saved by their Messiah, and you have to accept that you have certain inequities based just on your skin color alone. You only find this out after you have been living there a long time. This is not something they're going to tell outsiders.
Okay.
So that's why.
Well, now the outside, we're here to preach that they are actually racist.
Yes. And so brainwashing. Carolyn Figueroa, who spent a year with the 12 tribes and left in 2011, wasn't exposed to the cult's teachings about black people until after she left the group. Juan Figueroa, her father, enlisted Bob and Judy Pardon, as well as cult expert Steve Hassan, author of Combating Cult Mind Control, to help extract Carolyn from the group. Like, her dad literally was like, we got to get this girl out because this is crazy. At which time, former members of the 12 tribes explained to her the controversial teachings she had yet to learn. Because you learn this when, as you move up the rankings.
Oh, yeah, of course. As you move up the ranking, they prove that it's kind of like a mob thing.
Yes.
Yeah, mob mentality.
So Colucci was baptized into the 12 tribes after a mere 3 weeks living at the Stepping Stone farm, but didn't encounter the sham teaching, which dictated that he, as a man with black lineage on his father's side, was cursed to be subservient to whites for nearly a year with the cult.
Wow. Cursed.
A curse. Okay, thank you. I'm glad to know. It was a younger man, also mixed race, who introduced Colucci to the sham teaching. He says, something to the effect that black people are cursed and their only hope of righteousness is to submit to the white man. I was like, what? Are you kidding me? Colucci approached one of his community's leaders and asked about what he'd heard, and the leader reasserted the teaching in a more graceful way, Colucci says. I was offended at first, and looking back, I'm not sure why I eventually accepted it. I was focused on the positive, and I was listening to the teachings, and part of me really wanted everything else they said to be true. 2 years after he first heard the teaching, Colucci was sent to the 12 Tribes community in Hedonite, North Carolina, where many of the cult's leaders were living, including Yonek, the head honcho, if you will. The founder, and Yohanan Abraham, John Stringer, the African-American leader who penned Are the 12 Tribes Racist article. Okay. Abraham Stringer picked Colucci up at the airport in Charlotte when he arrived. At that time, I was fully inundated. I was brainwashed, Colucci says. Wow. It was like meeting a hero. I kind of idolized him. Here's this strong, powerful black man who's going to bring in more black people because we need more diversity. That's the way I thought about it.
Oh, that's not it.
No. But as he spoke to Abraham /Stringer and heard him speak about how Nathan Bedford Forrest and the early KKK were righteous because they'd brought order to the out-of-control northern blacks raping women in the South after the Civil War.
What in the hell?
Literally. Another in which, because he's so brainwashed too, because this is all trickling down from the top.
Crazy.
Another image from his pre-cult past came to mind. He was like the black white supremacist form the Dave Chappelle show.
From the Dave Chappelle show. Yeah.
Colucci
that's exactly what it sounds like.
Exactly. I was kind of double-minded the whole time I was there because I really wanted the 12 Tribes theology to be true.
Yeah.
And going back into more control. So Colucci left the 12 Tribes in 2012, which I'm glad he did, and I'm glad that he wrote this book because it is fascinating, his experience within it. Getting on a bus with his future wife the day after President Obama's re-election, which I'm sure the tribes had some feelings about.
Right.
But he didn't leave because of the cult's teachings about black people, but rather had become disillusioned with their theology. Former 12 Tribes member David Pike, who was part of the 12 Tribes from 1997 to 2004, was offended by some of the cult's teachings as well. He says he witnessed young children beaten extensively with thin balloon sticks. I saw some kids getting switched till they bled. he says, but he finally escaped and spent time at Bob and Judy Pardon's Meadowhaven facility, which helps people recover from abusive cults.
That's so cool, though.
It is a really interesting
I'd love to.
center.
Are they still alive?
I think so. I think
Okay.
they're really, really old, but I do believe they are still alive.
I'd love to,
Yeah.
film a little bit of them.
Yeah.
That's
I'm sure
super
the
interesting.
facility is still
Yeah.
around. So when he couldn't reconcile their theology with his own studies any longer, Jenny Flynn Fiore, a member of the 12 Tribes in the early 2000s, took issue with the cult's racism and authoritarian discipline of children and the treatment of women. I saw very controlling, overbearing husbands treating their wives pretty badly, and there was no real recourse. They were basically kitchen slaves, she says. But she spent years in and out of the group before finally cutting ties.
Wow.
It's remarkable that people of conscience like Colucci, Figueroa, Pike, and Fiore become indoctrinated to the 12 Tribes' abhorrent teachings on homosexuality, black people's subservience to whites, and extensive corporal punishment on small children. They really begin to control your internal reality, how you process things, how you see reality, says Bob Pardon, who has helped many of the former members of 12 Tribes transition out of the cult over the last 20 plus years. And he is also endorsed by the Southern Poverty Law Center.
Really?
So, yeah.
Okay.
There's a lot of emotional control. You feel guilty about things you shouldn't feel guilty about, and not guilty about things you should. And the same with fear. You fear things you shouldn't, and you don't fear things you probably should.
Yeah.
We were immigrants, Colucci writes in his memoir of his and his future wife's bus ride away from the 12 Tribes. We were leaving one nation, the nation of New Israel, the 12 Tribes communities, a nation in which women must be submissive to men, blacks and whites are not equal, homosexuality is a sin which gays must repent of if they want to be accepted, where even differing beliefs...
And not killed.
And not murdered, literally. Where even differing beliefs and opinions are not allowed, where your daily activities are strictly dictated, and we were entering what is arguably the freest nation on the planet.
I would say this is, after reading all this, one of
the most horrific cults.
Well, I would say it's one of the most dangerous cults on the planet.
Mm-hmm.
Like this is a dangerous cult, and it's in Savannah.
Yeah, literally.
Like, oh my gosh.
That's why I've been saying is like, there's no way it's not going to come to a point.
Oh, there's no way.
If they haven't killed someone already and just haven't been caught, there's no way somebody's not going to get murdered in this cult. Like, I just know it.
That's nuts.
But anyways, and we're going to finish off with some drama in the cult and police involvement. Drama's just for fun. But in July 2019, the American Federal Bureau of Investigation released a 40-page summary of the results of a closed preliminary investigation stemming from allegations of child abuse at the group's Hedonite, North Carolina property.
Wow.
Which is where the cult leader lives. So if it's happening there, probably happening everywhere. But the documents revealed the existence of other investigations over the years to include suspicions of child abuse in other compounds. There were also deaths alleged to be suspicious.
This is where the difficulty investigation comes through. Let's see.
On February 19th, 2020, police in New South Wales, Australia, executed a search warrant as part of Strike Force Nanagai. On the group's Peppercorn Creek Farm property, seizing documents and other evidence in what has been a prolonged investigation into allegations of child abuse in the group.
Peppercorn Creek is so cute. It's such a cute name. Jeez.
And that was in Australia, if you didn't catch that. But on March 3rd, 2020, police returned for a more extensive search operation for stillborn babies buried on the property at Peppercorn Creek Farm.
Nothing's surprising me anymore. Nothing's surprising me anymore. Like, this is crazy.
Exactly. And another of the group's properties, on March 7th, an updated report said, the body of at least one infant was found on the farm. In September 2020, NSW police announced in a statement they anticipated a close of the investigation late 2020 or early 2021. No official closure or criminal charges had been announced as of October 2021. In December 2021, a fire broke out in Boulder County, Colorado, which if you've caught any wind of this cult, this is usually the case that people start to... This is what dragged this cult back into the public eye.
Okay.
Yeah. In June 2023, the Boulder County Sheriff's Office issued its investigative summary of the fire, in which it concluded that the Marshall Fire originated from two sources, one of them being a slash burn intentionally started on the 12 Tribes residential property 6 days prior on December 20th.
Slash burn? What the hell's a slash
I have
burn?
no idea.
I'm going to look it up.
On December 24th, 2021. The slash burn was visited by local firefighters after a community member noted the size of the fire. However, the responders were...
Wait 1 second. Slash and burn is a farming technique that involves cutting down and burning vegetation to clear land for growing crops. So it's just a control burn.
Gotcha. Basically, it was reported by a community member because it was getting too big.
Yeah.
And so a resident on the property told detectives that he allowed the fire to burn to coals, at which point he covered the fire with dirt, but did not extinguish the coals with water. Criminal charges were not brought against those at the property, as slash burning is not illegal in Boulder County. Logs of police calls to the 12 Tribes compounds in Boulder County and Manitou Springs in Colorado show that child abuse remains a concern. A 911 caller in May 2020 sent Manitou Springs police to the commune. Thereafter, a young relative who had visited the group reported that children were being kept in a basement without electricity, according to records provided by Manitou Springs police. That caller, who asked not to be identified to preserve relationships with his relatives, said police told her they knocked on the door of the commune, asked a few questions, and left without going inside.
Jeez.
Yeah. The 12 Tribes was known to be peaceful and everything seemed okay that night, they told her. Because, of course, they're going to say that.
Yeah.
Duh. But Manitou Springs police records show officers spent 13 minutes at the compound. A police spokesman did not know whether officers went inside the house. In September 2019, child welfare officials and sheriff's deputies visited the compound in Boulder County and interviewed several people as part of a Child Protective Services investigation, according to a report provided by the sheriff's office. Deputies went along out of concern the group might be hostile, but the cult members welcomed the inquiry, the report says. Well, yeah, because that's like their biggest way of coping with these things, is they're just they're too delightful.
Exactly.
Yeah. The children living on the property seemed to be happy and healthy, and they even sang us a couple songs like a cult does.
A cult does.
Yeah. They literally...
Oh, my God. It's like that's the number one thing you look for.
Wait, didn't they do that at Jonestown, too?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, they were singing.
Yeah.
They were singing the night before, remember?
Yes.
Yeah.
And they even sang
Remember
us...
like we were there, but
I know.
yeah.
And they even sang us a couple songs while we were there. Deputy Jay Ryan wrote in his report, "You've been duped, Deputy." Yeah. So
goodness gracious.
Police also responded to reports of teenagers who ran away from the Colorado properties. In September 2020, a 16-year-old girl fled the Manitou Springs compound in the middle of the night, according to a police report. In June 2018, a 15-year-old boy who was living in the Boulder, Colorado commune ran away, sheriff's records show. The teenager returned after about 2 days and told deputies he'd ridden his bicycle from the El Dorado Springs Drive commune to Westminster, slept the night on a patch of grass, then continued to ride his bike all the way into the 16th Street Mall in Denver, where he spent the day before cycling back to the commune. I think because he got caught. And he was like,
he was just scared and just didn't know where to go.
Right.
And was like, I got to go back.
Right.
Yeah.
The boy appeared very genuine in his statement, saying he was not going to do this ever again and that he was sorry for putting his mother and father in such constant worry, the deputy's report says. I would love to know if that child is okay.
Yeah.
Because he got beat to a pulp after that. There's no way. And then another police report also details the January 5th arrest of Ron Williams, who was 50 years old, on a year-old outstanding warrant for felony sexual exploitation of children.
Goodness.
After Boulder County authorities discovered more than 1,000 images of child sexual abuse in Williams' possession in 2020.
Wait, so they... Like, was he taking the images? Like, was he?
Yeah, and
he was shooting it.
Yes, and he had it in his possession. At the time, he was living in a home in Superior. That home burned in the Marshall Fire.
Mm-hmm.
When he was arrested in January, he'd been staying with the 12 tribes, so it's not clear for how long. As he was arrested a short walk away from the 12 tribes compound in Manitou Springs, Officer Ron Johnson described Williams to other officers as a possible suspect in the Boulder fire multiple times, according to body camera footage. But Carrie Haverfield, a spokeswoman for the Boulder County Sheriff's Office, said Williams was never a suspect in the Marshall Fire investigation. He was someone that was staying on the property at the time and so was loosely associated with the property. So he was indexed along with everybody else, but never a suspect, she said.
Okay.
So that's all of their encounters with the police. And
they got away with all of it.
They did. Every single one of them. And here's some drama, just because I love to see the cult leaders suffer. Around 2008, the 12 tribes learned that its founder's wife, Marcia Spriggs, had carried out a series of extramarital affairs.
My Lord.
Gene Spriggs, the founder, and by the way, he died in 2021, ultimately decided his wife should be forgiven. And because if you show weakness as the leader, then it all ruins, it ruins everything you have. But the scandal rocked members' faith in the group's leadership.
I bet it did.
Especially because they're like, so we can't have sex outside of marriage, but you can, your wife can.
Well, I mean, there's a bunch of different things going on there. There's a bunch of different, because they could see him as like, not saying that not saying that people get cheated on is they're not weak, but like they might see, them as that.
But Marcia
might see him as that.
But Marcia was considered a leader too. So like if she's not following the rules, then why should they?
No, exactly. Yeah. Absolutely. That's crazy.
But the affair revelations accelerated people's departures from the group, and the leadership at the 12 tribes responded by clamping down even more strictly on the dwindling numbers of families who remained.
Sure.
And even before her husband's death, Marcia Spriggs was considered the de facto leader of the 12 tribes, ex-members said. Though the tribe's patriarchal organization would never formally reflect that. But, for example, an ex-member who left in his 30s said he met one-on-one with Eugene Spriggs as a teenager in the mid-1990s and told the man about horrific childhood abuse he had endured in the 12 tribes. He said the founder wept silently as he shared the details of the abuse. But after just 5 minutes, Marcia Spriggs burst into the room and sent the member out. She spoke to her husband briefly, then cornered the member in the hallway. She comes out and says, "If you ever tell Yonek anything like that again, I'll send you away from us that day," the member said.
Wow.
And that is everything we have on the 12 tribes.
That's everything on the 12 tribes. That was amazing information, Madison. You kicked ass. That was awesome.
I know. That was a party.
So go ahead and put your numbers down. Okay. All right, y'all, submit your numbers for how evil they are. This is definitely, for me, this is going to be our highest rating. So I gave them, I'll go ahead and start. I gave them a 9 for brutality. And they're because, I mean, they're super abusive to children, already gets them a massively high score. Things that they said about homosexuality and African Americans, it's just brutal. The only reason that they're not getting a 10 is that I have no information that they've killed multiple people.
That's exactly why I knocked it off.
And so premeditation, 10. Mm-hmm. I mean, they got this
pretty clear. Yeah.
They got this stuff premeditated. They got everything, all the evil stuff they do premeditated, down to just laying so low and making money off of the communities where they live with these restaurants, but using that to, fund this abusive lifestyle. Unbelievable. The motive is, I'm going to give it a 9. And, their motive is to have a cult. And towards the end, you said that some of the leaders, them relying on the cult, it was shaken. The reliability on the cult was shaken by Marcia cheating and whatnot. So I took it down a little bit, but difficulty of investigation, I'm giving them an 8 because they do have cops on them, and they're being investigated, but they're just really good at getting away with it.
Yeah, well, and especially because those are so recent. That's within the past 5 years.
Yeah.
So it's like, that shows, especially in Colorado, because Colorado was, when all of that was happening, the Denver Post, I want to say, was the one who really amplified it to everybody who follows cult stuff.
Exactly. And they have how many members? Thousands, right?
Oh, thousands. Absolutely.
So I'm giving them a body count of 10 because they aren't just, affecting these children. They're also affecting the adults. The adults join, and all of a sudden they're probably brainwashed into being trapped, but a lot of them, like normal cults, don't admit that they're trapped. Yeah. And the kids, obviously, that's the most harrowing thing. I'm terrified that the kids near us, in Savannah, I'm terrified that they are going through this type of abuse, and they just have it so trapped that they're just going to have to endure it because there's no evidence that it's happening because they're just so damn good. They're so good, which makes premeditation for sure a 10. Still, I mean, that's the premeditation is probably, if I could give it 11, I would, because they've got it so down. Mm-hmm. So I'm gonna start putting them together. All right, so we have a Mox Clash said 9, and Claire said 8.5.
Y'all give your rankings in the chat, and for those of you who are listening, go ahead and comment what you give this down below. Like we said at the beginning, you can break it down into all 5 categories, or you can just give all over a whole number if you want. Yep. But yes, so I gave the brutality a 9 because I knocked it down for the same reason that you had, JT. Yep. Premeditation, I gave it a 10. They very clearly laid out why they do things, and they wrote about it. It's all written out. And so, especially with the child discipline, because I'm sure that pissed off the leaders majorly when that got put out, because some former member made that public. And, you can literally go read it. And it is so horrifying to read. That people genuinely think this is how you are supposed to treat children. It is just mind-boggling. Motive, I gave it a 10 because of the fact that, again, it's very clear. They have very, very laid out beliefs. Yeah. And they act upon them. And without remorse either. They don't care that it hurts people and it affects children. It affects people who are of different ethnicities. Because imagine what those people, because like they said, they have black people and mixed people and people of different ethnicities within this group. Imagine what that does to people's minds when they leave that group and they've been told that they are subservient for years of their life.
And it destroys them.
It does.
And luckily, Meadowhaven is there to help.
And that's a fantastic resource, honestly.
It's a great resource.
But the difficulty of investigation, I gave it an 8.5, just because they've been able to lie low so much. And, granted, they've been pulled into, controversial limelight since their beginning, but nobody's ever been able to officially do something about it. Yeah. And that's the problem. And the fact that police just let them go because they're nice and probably make them cookies and children sing songs to them, because if they don't, they're going to get beat by a balloon stick.
That's crazy.
That is insane. I implore the police departments in these areas to listen to this.
Yeah.
And also to go read the books and the articles from former members. Just like go invest some time into that.
I hope people listen to this entire episode, because this is just like, this is one of the most dangerous cults in the world, and they're right in your backyard. They're in your neighborhood, most likely. That's unbelievable.
And for body count, I'd also gave it a 10, because there isn't any evidence necessarily that is concrete that they have killed people. I would not be surprised if that comes out within the next few years, that they've killed a ton of people for a various amount of reasons.
But we don't know.
Or even children from getting punished too harshly, because that happens too in these sort of communities where they are abusive to children, things happen, you know?
This is...
But regardless, at the very base of what we do know, there's for sure hundreds, if not thousands, of children that have been brutalized for the past 30 years
to make better cult members.
Yes, exactly. And that's
crazy.
Horrific.
That's crazy.
So that's my final scores.
I did not know when we were doing the 12 tribes. I didn't know about 60 to 70% of this. I knew about them, and I knew what, the allegations and all that, but I had no idea that it was I had no idea that it was this abusive and this dangerous. So
it's gnarly.
That's wild. That's wild. It's crazy that it's like all over the place. So.
Yeah. And if you see people getting recruited by those members, you can spot them. They're very easy to spot. They're always wearing harem pants. They always, women are always wearing bandanas, or they have their hair braided.
They look so nice.
They look so nice, but they're so not. And so, if you see somebody getting approached by that, maybe let them know. Maybe let them know.
Yikes.
So, did you get a final score?
Yes, final score is 8.61. That's our highest ranker.
I think so.
Yeah. It's our highest ranker so far. So, wow.
Yeah,
insane in the membrane.
Yeah, so that was delightful. Yeah. I'm so glad that things like this exist in the world. And here's the thing, y'all. I do find cults very interesting, but I don't wish this upon anybody. To be honest, it's very disturbing.
It's evil.
It's very disturbing that it's still currently happening.
Yeah.
Because we can look at cults that ended in some capacity, and we can discuss that. No. Amoxiclash said... kind of want to be recruited for y'all. Don't do that. Don't do that. I mean, I appreciate the sentiment, but don't do that. But regardless, so y'all, thank you for listening to today's episode. I hope you enjoyed. Obviously you can tell we have very strong opinions about this.
Jeez. How do you not? After hearing all that.
But so let us know what you rank this down below if you're listening on Spotify or YouTube. Also, if you have a true crime case or a criminal that you want us to cover and rank on our particular basis, I guess, if you will, let us know. Leave it down below so that maybe we will cover it in one of our future episodes. But with that, my name is Madison Timmons.
And I'm JT Timmons.
And don't forget, next time you're walking down the sidewalk, you might just be passing a perfect 10.